welcome everyone. Welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast, a sacred space where you can kiss your doubt goodbye and embark with confidence and love on your request to become the hero on your journey back to wholeness. Together with brilliant minds, we venture into the unknown to revive and mend what is torn and to patch what is missing. Today I'm so excited. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Claudia. Claudia is a pharmacist, a passionate advocate for patient empowerment, and a dedicated student of Joe Dispenza's work. For the past 4 years, professionally, she has devoted her career to helping people take ownership of their health through education, knowledge, and informed decision making. But beyond her professional lies even a deeper mission, inspiring others to become the highest version of themselves. And that is also due to her path, to her own journey. It wasn't always, easy or full of confidence and self-trust. She has faced quite some years of anxiety, depression, perfectionism, disordered eating, panic attacks, and self-doubt. And while navigating academic pressure, relationship challenges, and family challenges. So it was a lot of things that happened, a lot of fear, control, and self-criticism. And well, what once she was kind of reluctantly starting the inner journey, she now is fully in. And we are so blessed today to have her on this beautiful podcast and to tell her journey and let us know all the beautiful lessons and learnings that she has gathered along the journey. So, Claudia, thank you so much for being here. And microphone is yours. Again, thank you so incredibly much. And I would like to ask you, where has your journey started?
Thank you so much for having me. This is truly an honor to get to talk about my journey and share it with others. It all started, I think I've always been drawn to self-help and self-improvement in some capacity throughout the years, but this journey with Dr. Joe and his work and what really was the pivotal moment in starting my growth with all of this was in 2018 or so was my first exposure to Dr. Joe's work through my mom. I helped her translate a lot of his podcasts and videos. So that was my first foray into his work and his meditations, even though I didn't practice myself. And then I fully became a student of his work after I realized that I personally had to change. I had to make that admission to myself in 2022. And since then, I haven't looked back, and it's been truly a life-changing experience. But essentially, in 2022, I realized that I needed help after I really came to a head with all of my afflictions, most of them self-inflicted. Um, and I had to change. And so it all started with the progressive course from Dr. Joe. That was my first sort of, I guess, introduction to it all, and the first step that I really took towards meditation and self-improvement and rewiring my mind and my nervous system. And I started that before our first retreat in June of 2022.
Beautiful. It sounds awesome. Can you give us a little insight of who you were emotionally, or like how your mental chatter would look like in the past, like your emotional and mental well-being? How would you react, or who was that past version basically?
So that past version of myself was very negative and closed-minded. I dealt with a
Mm.
lot of issues with self-worth and self-esteem. I wasn't very confident in myself, as compared to how I am today. It definitely still is a journey, and there's always progress to be made, but it's a 180-degree difference, I would say. I used to dream of being in the place that I'm in today, to be quite honest with you, when I look
Mhm.
back and I take a look. But there was definitely a lot of self-doubt, a lot of negativity. I operated from a very much so like a lack mindset, scarcity. I was scared of everything. I dealt with depression on and off throughout the years, probably from when I was about 13 till 24, I think was, and with that came anxiety and panic attacks, um, and as well as disordered eating. Those all kind of culminate together. And it was all just sort of trying to cope with the mindset, and a lot of it I necessarily wasn't aware of throughout the years. And then as I kind of learned more about myself, I had to dismantle a lot of that. But it was definitely a big difference as to how I am today, where I choose to be positive and grateful, and that's become my normal state. And I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful. May I ask if you had received any professional help as well? Like, because you mentioned you were suffering from depression and stuff, or how was the old healing modality looking for you?
So, in terms of getting professional help, I did do some therapy at some points, personal therapy as well as family counseling. Just for I'll probably get into that at some point with my story, but there was some therapy, but a lot of it was personal work. So self-development, reading self-help books, meditation, journaling, just working through my issues on personally in isolation. I found that that was the biggest sort
Mm,
of help for me.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That is, yeah, I guess at some point you just come to also some sort of conclusion that that was my personal experience too when I sat in this therapist room, and she was awesome, she was wonderful, but even they cannot get into your head and you
Like,
know do the things, and she helped me and it was beautiful, and I'm very, very grateful to her. I think there's just some stuff that you have to do by yourself.
yeah, you
Yes.
I always go back to this quote that at the end of the day, you're the only one that answers to yourself, and you are the longest relationship that you have in your life. So a lot of those things you have to work through on your own in order to like actually learn about yourself and grow as a
Mm,
person. You can't necessarily rely, external things are important, and they can provide support,
yes.
but I think at the end of the day, it's you, yourself, and I through it all. So I think that that really, yeah, that's definitely like a pivotal thing that I've noticed in all of this.
Definitely. Wow. Well, thank you so much for providing us a little insight of where you kind of got started.
Of course.
Okay, so now we have some sort of picture who you were in the past, and you said you helped your mom to translate some stuff from Joe Dispenza. Can you describe how you sort of slid into in the work, and especially because there was a point where you knew the work, or you knew what was, or like the material, and then there was a point a little bit later on where you really decided to do something about it and to really apply it. So maybe you can guide us to that point where you actually said, okay, now I really want to do this for myself.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, my parents got legally separated, and so my mom was dealing with a lot of that since, it was the dissolution of her marriage. So she ended up finding Dr. Joe's work, and a few other like spiritual leaders on like YouTube. And that was like her main sort of coping mechanism, just like learning, trying to make a change in herself in order to like decompress stress, like with deal with the stress and all of that, since you go through a lot mentally, physically, and emotionally through this kind of process with the dissolution of like your nuclear family. And My parents are Polish, so that is our primary language that we spoke at home. It's the language that my parents mainly speak. And Dr. Joe speaks a lot in English since that's the language that he teaches in. So if there was something that she didn't understand in terms of like a YouTube video, a podcast, she'd asked me to translate a lot of the concepts and things like that to help her better understand so that she could continue on her own path through this work. And I was in college and pharmacy school, so I felt pulled in multiple ways. You know, I had my family situation, I had my academics, I had my own personal things going on. And it was just like another thing. Like I would help her, but I had my own responsibilities to handle. So I understood the work. I understood where he was coming from. That wasn't a problem for me. I guess I was just stubborn and I didn't want to add one more thing onto my plate.
Yeah.
And I was in denial to a certain extent at the beginning of my own problems. I just kept pushing them off and internalizing them because I wanted to get good grades and continue on in school. And I just had other priorities in that moment. And I guess I didn't, in those moments, in like 2018, 2019, didn't really have the capacity to admit to myself that the path that I was going down was problematic and would come to such a head at some point. Um, but my mom kept pushing me. She's like, "Hey, we're in the same like emotional situation psychologically. Like I can tell like you're very stressed out, you're not doing well." Like she's my mom. She's obviously going to care the most about me that she can. And I was just like, "No, no, like I need to find time, like maybe over the summer, like when I'm off semester, like I'll start." And I just kept pushing it off in my own stubborn ways. Um, and so she like it was always Dr. Doe was always playing in my house. And there were a few moments where I almost like kind of got into the work. I'd noticed like he was on in the background. I had a test the next day. There was one instance I remember, and I was like super stressed out studying for my test the next day. Um, and I just noticed like I felt a little bit lighter with his voice on in the background. It was almost like the hypnosis and conditioning. I felt like the stress dissipate, the anxiety dissipate, and I ended up doing a little bit better on the test. So that piqued my interest, but I never really took it too much to heart or like I committed it to memory, but it wasn't enough to really pull the lever for me. And it wasn't until the COVID-19 pandemic and then in 2021 when I went through a breakup with my boyfriend and everything sort of just fell out from underneath me. Um, I was in like the thick of my panic, my depression. I was definitely like dealing with a lot of disordered eating. And I just felt physically ill a lot of the time, but I kept pushing through. Um, so it wasn't until that was probably in like November, December of 2021 where I just started to really like admit to myself that a lot was going on, that heartbreak really did me in addition to just the kind of leftover turmoil of my parents' separation. My mom had lost her job during the pandemic as well, so we were dealing with that, and there was a lot of like uncertainty in our future. And it wasn't until my mom decided that we should go to our first retreat that I really kind of started to take the idea of this all seriously.
Mm.
So I had finished my spring semester in April and May of 2022, and I decided you always have to do the progressive course before you go to your first retreat. So that was what I started with. And I think probably like a few days into that, like the first few meditations, I noticed such a big breakthrough and change within myself, and I was like, all right, like there has to be something to this. And after that, it was all just game over. Like I've been in it since. So
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm curious as well, because you said before you have also been working on yourself or been into like personal development. What kind of things were you doing there, and like what felt different, or like what was the approach there? Because sometimes I feel like well, at least from my experience, uh, it doesn't is not necessarily true to every coach out there, but sometimes the self-love part is missing and it's very focused on being productive. So I'm curious about your experience with with that.
so um I like what you said because a lot of the books do focus. So I guess I read a lot of like self-help books. A lot of them were like about improving your productivity,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that type A, sort of like fixing your output. And then I would also read those books on like self-love and being a better person and like reframing your mindset. However, when you're in such a disorganized state and your nervous system is so overstimulated, it's kind of hard to take them to heart. Like you understand the concept, but then translating it to practice can be very difficult if it's the complete opposite of the state that you're living in. It takes a lot
Mm.
of work. Um, and you most oftentimes fail, or that is kind of the journey. Like you will fail multiple times until you feel like you have 2 feet on the ground and you can start walking the path of the speak that you're speaking, essentially. So like you talk the talk, but then you also have to learn to walk the walk. So going back, I was definitely focusing a lot on improving like productivity. I was so focused on school and things like that. I wanted to just be a better version of myself in that capacity. I found that academics were a way for me to kind of take control of my future. I found that as an outlet. And then beyond that, I was always interested in like manifestation and vision boarding. I love Pinterest. I still do. So I spent a lot of time on that. I'd read like motivational quotes and things like that. And I'd always like have one that really spoke to me as like my phone wallpaper and serve as a reminder. So there were always um, like glimmers and pushes here and there as to me trying to always be a better version of myself. Um, but it never really became such a big facet of my life until I started to meditate. It's difficult to really push yourself to change when you don't have like a set routine and you don't have the full understanding of like why you do the practice and like
Mhm.
actual tools to have a good practice. Um, Beyond that, so I think that what really drew me to Dr. Joe's work is he explains the neuroscience behind change, which a lot of these books and these gurus online do too, but the way that Dr. Joe does it, he marries it with the science of like neurochemistry and biology and explains why stress is so harmful to us and the progress that we can make when we rewire ourselves to a better, healthier version, um, and just how fundamental that is to our core of our being. And I think that that's what drew me in. I come from a science background. I'm a pharmacist,
Mm.
education and training. So I really understood that aspect, and that's what drew me in as well. And I think that the connection between understanding the information and then the practice is what really solidified everything for me. And it's been something that I've always come back to time and time again.
Beautiful. Awesome. Okay, well then let's jump into the river of change. You you kind of decided, okay, let's go. I'm gonna change. Woo! Let's meditate. You sit down to meditate. What happened?
So I think it was like my first or second meditation from the um, progressive retreat, the course rather.
Mm.
I don't know like how to even describe it, but I remember it was such a vivid memory. All of a sudden I felt like my body was on fire and I just had to like lay down and I was shaking and I just felt like my awareness open up. Like I could see sounds, I could hear colors. Like it was like very trippy, almost how people say when they do like illicit substances and they have those like mystical experiences. It was that, but it was definitely like a breakthrough in my level of consciousness. So that was my first exposure to it all. And then I had a lot of wild experiences at the week-long retreat. You know, you're in a big environment with over 2,000 people coming together to meditate. There's a lot of convergent energy, it's all amplified. And so there were a lot of breakthroughs in that week that I'm very grateful. I got to work through a lot of the things. Like a lot of my personal relationships, I had to go through a lot of forgiveness for people, including myself. And I also just, there was a moment, I think, during one of the walking meditations where I was just laying on the ground sobbing. And I said, I can never disrespect myself as much as I have up to this point, and I'm going to make it a point to never be this way ever again. And I think after that point, it was still a process and still a journey. But it's was a very big path to growth. And I think with each and every meditation that we do, whether we meditate every day or however many times a week we can, there's always a little glimmer of insight that we learn, which is why I love meditation so much. We connect to this big energy, this consciousness that we live in, that we exist in. And there's always something that comes through, and that might not be right away, but we gain another level of awareness. And I think that that is so powerful and valuable to our human experience. It just makes us better people. And when we learn this information, we show up in a different way in our lives. And then that gets reflected back to us, but it also shows other people that, the way that we carry ourselves and the way that we present ourselves and interact with our environment and other people, it causes a shift in their environment as well. It's all kind of one of the things I've definitely learned through meditation is that, like, everything is a mirror. We essentially, like, the world's just a disco ball filled with like little mirrors, like a little mirror we all reflect back onto each other of like this big just ball of energy that we live in. And I think it's like the more you think about that, the trippier it is, but also the more that it makes sense, if that makes any sense.
I love that the word is a disco ball. I will remember that. I think I'm gonna write this down. It's pretty obvious. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm curious because since you've been dealing also like in the past with panic attacks or depression, which also have some sort of physical expressions, how was that when you encountered in meditations, maybe some layers or sometimes stuff comes up.
Yeah.
Was it scary or what was that kind of crossing the river? Was it easier for you to surrender into something bigger and more loving because you understood the background, or how were you dealing with those difficult meditations or like challenging ones where you really got to the end of some beliefs there?
That's a great question. I think that the whenever I like look back at how far I've come, sometimes I have the inkling to be a little metacognitive and reflect on how far I've come every once in a
Mm.
while, just to remind myself of the journey. Um, it's never been necessarily easy. I think we grow through our challenges. That's what makes us better people. So it's never necessarily going to be easy, but it's as easy as you can make it for yourself. Um, so I think whenever I was meditating, definitely a lot of those harder feelings came back. It was a lot of peeling back the layers and understanding who I was at my core. Whether, it was conditioning that I learned as a child or just like experiences that I had throughout my life where, you know, I had some sort of negative emotional reaction and that was internalized and then expressed subconsciously. Um, or just like dealing with stress and like this kind of snowballing of all of that can there's so many things that like all go into all of this. So like when you meditate, you kind of like understand more of who you are at your core, and you're allowed to almost distance yourself from the experiences and understand and analyze like maybe why it happened or why you feel that way. And so you have to work through those emotions. The only way out is through.
Mhm.
It's also one of my favorite quotes. So it was a process. It definitely took some time. I think looking back, maybe 1.5 to 2 years for me to fully like feel better and get back to some sort of like normal semblance of a baseline, even though it didn't really feel like a baseline at first, because I was so used to like living in this negative thought process and mindset that
Mm.
felt so unfamiliar in the beginning. Um, but I had to work through a lot of feelings of like loneliness and shame and just work on feeling good with myself, and forgiving myself, giving myself the compassion, learning that I'm on the journey that is life, um, and sort of not taking so many things to heart because I think I'm an empathetic person, or
Mhm.
rather, I am an empathetic person. And so, with that, sometimes you tend to internalize and absorb a lot of outside emotions. And when you do that, you can kind of get confused because you internalize it all. And so you can sometimes get confused, confusing those external feelings for your own. Um, but that's not necessarily true. Um,
Mm.
and so it was a lot about learning detachment as well. And the more that you meditate, the more that you open your heart. And when you open your heart, you sort of don't identify with those feelings anymore, which is another part of the process. So I feel like the more heart-centered that I've become, the easier it's been to just be able to be me at the end of the day. And that's why I no longer identify with like feelings of panic, anxiety, depression. I no longer feel like I have to control anything because I'm feel centered within my heart and myself, and I know what I want and what's good for me.
Wow, that's beautiful. Love that. Yes, yes, that's true. The more you find your way back to your heart, the easier it kind of gets, or you're just grounded in yourself.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Did you have, like in the beginning though, the way of opening up your heart? It took maybe a little while. Did you maybe have something that gave you strength during the day? Because sometimes we come into meditation and we get out and then we get into our life and then totally forgot what we felt in the meditation. And I mean, it's a journey, it's a process. Wherever you start, it's fine. But what helped you throughout the day?
So I always loved to learn. So
Mm,
being in school, I feel like my academics were always my priority. I love to learn, I love to study. I'm very, not to identify myself with any sort of like personality, but I'm very like type A. Like I love to write things out, color code everything. So that was always like a big stress reliever for me. And I felt like I could get lost in my academics and really achieve a flow state. Um, I guess like during this entire process, I definitely saw school as a way to sort of make my own path and be able to aim for a future that I saw for myself. So I really anchored onto that, and that was a big anchoring point for myself as well through this entire process. I was going through the river of change and like dealing with so many life changes as well as my own internal changes. So that was definitely something. I always loved to work out as well and like move. And I was also very focused on like building a career that I love. So I'd work and just study and be able to sort of surround myself in the things that I loved. And also just like my relationships. I have a great relationship with my mom. We've gotten so much stronger through everything that we've been through and this work. So that's been such a blessing. And I've also found great friendships through this all as well. So those have all been things that have really supported me through this entire journey, and I
mm,
feel like have helped me open up my heart and stay grounded in my heart as well.
beautiful. Yeah, community is really what
Right.
strengthens your back and just captures you and helps you and to get up on your feet again. It's so important. Like community is such a blessing, especially when you have some really heart-centered people around you. It's the most healthy and important thing ever, I feel like. Oh, wow. Thanks you so much for sharing that. And how would you describe your relationship with yourself now? How was it like? I mean, our journey still continues. It always continues, but after surpassing, the biggest threshold of not feeling and identifying with depression or panic or control anymore. How has your relationship been with yourself? How has been your mental chatter, and also how is it different from the old person?
So my relationship with myself, I feel like I'm on great terms with myself. More recently than ever. I think now that I feel more grounded in my life and I've definitely had made my path for myself. I feel like my life has been very stable recently. And it's a true reflection of like all the work that I've done, which I'm so grateful for. Um, So I'm still learning to like love myself and truly like honor myself, listen to my intuition. I don't think that that journey ever stops. It just evolves as you change and grow as a person. It might look different in every phase of your life, but I think um, my life like finally sort of calmed down after school and residency, and now I have like a full-time job and I'm able to explore my passions and my hobbies and be able to like truly be present with myself outside of sort of like the chaos in life. I make time to be with myself and do the things that I love, um, beyond just like my job, my career, my relationships. And I think that that has been very centering and grounding. Um, and when I'm with myself, I often try to find time to like reflect and be present and always just find ways to make my understand myself, and where I'm coming from, especially if I'm ever like stressed out. I try to, sometimes life isn't linear, our path is never linear, so we often swerve off, things sidetrack us. We always, stress is never going to go away. It's just a matter of how you cope with it. Um, so I think like with the way that everything has gone and the work that we do with all of this meditation and self-improvement and always just trying to be the best version of ourselves, we cultivate this appreciation for gratitude and finding joy every single day, whether it be spending time with like friends and family, doing things that we love, exploring hobbies. And so you choose those things that make you happy, and therefore you find your own happiness. And that is sort of like my baseline now. And then if anything ever goes astray or I feel a little bit more stressed out than usual, it's just going back to those basics of things that make me
Mm.
good. So like recently, a lot of that looks like just like movement. So I love to go on long walks, either just to be with myself or like listen to a podcast, some great music, and just really get those endorphins going. You can never beat endorphins. They're happy chemicals. I've recently taken up Pilates and ballet, which are great, like
Ooh,
exercise. They're very
ballet.
difficult, but they're very good for like the mind-body connection. So it helps me like put my phone down, like be centered in myself, be like within a class and like really push myself. So that's been great. And then just like learning more about different things that interest me. So recently that looks like the David Guillaume podcast. He talks a lot about Kabbalah, which are similar themes and ideas like to Dr. Joe's work, listening to different podcasts on like health and wellness, listening to Dr. Joe. We bought the updated progressive course online. So I've been like reworking all of those ideas and going back to the basics.
I
And
love
then
that.
also just doing like healings through Healed by the Future. I think that that has been such like a solid core staple, and I can never like be upset or unhappy just sharing my love with people that need it more than anything. I think that that like when you outpour love from yourself, it always comes back in some other way. And it's not even about giving it, it's just a matter of expressing it. And I think that that's been the thing that has really allowed me to feel like good within myself. I think
Mm.
that that is like truly at the end of the day the core principle of like my being.
Beautiful. That's thank you. I love that. Yes. And yeah, like the healings are also so helpful
Yeah.
when you just learn how to take off your attention from your own problems and you just focus on someone else, and then it's
Hmm.
almost effortless to really surrender to that beautiful, beautiful love. Um,
Truly.
so basically, just to kind of shorten it up for the viewers here, for the listeners, what is helping you is just going back to the basics, also continuing to evolve your model of understanding why you're doing this, so you have a great intention behind this, and then your meditation practice and just also taking some time for yourself and doing some stuff also physically, like sport movement is very healthy. Awesome. Perfect. Um, how do you approach change now? Let's say if you are confronted with an unknown situation, and also if you want to change some stuff by yourself, like not waiting till something is asking you to change, but how do you approach it now?
This, I think, is something that I've grown to learn. It's taken me a few trips to do so, as I like to say. Definitely a few lessons to like actually be able to like speak with intention behind this, but you just have to be open to it working out in whatever way that it needs to. I think it's a process, like change requires you to surrender to some unknown outcome. You can never force your way through
Mm,
anything. Um, so I think that it definitely took me some time to be able to like learn this and actually understand it and let go. In more ways than one, like emotionally, physically, stop white knuckling through life. Like you're not going to be able to control every single outcome. Um, so it's just a matter of surrendering to the unknown. There were moments when I was very uncertain about the future, but I had this idea of what I wanted it to be, what I wanted it to look like, but the universe was just not, things weren't aligning. So there were moments when I just had to sit down and say, I surrender to it happening whatever way it needs to, and I'm open to this, and I'm not going to force or complain. I'm just open to it all working out. And that level of detachment, I feel like brings everything in because you just let go. And then the universe has a funny way of making everything work and bring whatever you need to you. I think also when you take a look at your life and you're concerned about something working out, you've managed to get this far and everything somehow worked out for you to get to this place that you're in right now. So when you understand that, um, and then marry that with the concept of just surrendering to the unknown and possibility, it almost adds like a lightness to your life that you know that you're going to end up where you're meant to be. It just might, the path might look a little bit different. So I love quotes. I love Pinterest, as I said. So one of my favorite quotes that explains this is be stubborn with the plan, but flexible with the path. So I feel
oh
like that
yeah.
like summarizes what I'm trying to say in like a very concise manner.
Awesome. Yeah, that yeah. Yeah, I feel that. Be stubborn with yeah, yeah. Yeah. I definitely can be stubborn. I need more flexibility in the surrendering part. But the first one I got.
It's good to be stubborn, but sometimes you just have to let things go and know that it'll all work out because it did to this point. And
Yeah.
like, it's good to be stubborn. I don't like you have to go after what you want in life, but sometimes I feel like we chase a little bit too hard and we get in our own way. I think
Oh,
that that is like the
definitely.
main lesson. So, like, you just
Definitely.
sometimes just have to kind of make peace with it all and just be like, yeah, I'll get there. Might take me a little bit longer, might not look the way I want it to, but I'll get there. So it's just a matter of just kind of being open to whatever path you land on.
Mm, definitely. Definitely. And yeah, I totally agree with this. It's a kind of delicate balance in a
Really.
way, and it's a learning process to let go of the control in terms of how it's supposed to, or like how you think it's supposed to work out. But it's a practice, and we can definitely all learn about that.
Never ends. It truly never ends.
Yes. Was there, apart from like maybe the mystical experiences that you had during those retreats, but was there another experience where it really blew your mind or really strengthened your belief in like you can heal or you can create whatever you want in life? When did that really land?
Um, so healing for me was a bit of a journey. It took some time for me to feel like
Mm,
truly healed. through this all because I was dealing with a lot of like mental things that had physical manifestation. So I
Mm.
had to heal the root for the tree to feel stable, for lack of a better term. So when I like started to rewire my consciousness and really soothe my nervous system, be able to get back to a baseline of like a calm nervous system, no longer live in the hormones of stress, a lot of like my physical manifestations and my mental sort of manifestations dissipated. So like my anxiety got better, my depression got better. With that, my panic left. I had like a lot of hormonal issues as well. So like I lost my period for a while through all of this because of the stress and like disordered eating. So that came back, that healed. And then just feeling better, no longer like feeling like I'm sick and nauseous and on the verge of like falling over because I was so like lightheaded and like just living in stress that I couldn't think straight.
Wow.
Um, so getting back to that sort of just feeling healthy again took some time, but you never take that for granted. Um, I also had some like enlarged lymph nodes under my armpit for some time. So I was going for like imaging to make sure that they were stable. They were telling me to go back every few months just to keep monitoring them, which was a scary situation. You know, you never know what that can progress through to, but your lymph system is throughout all your body. And if I don't know if I was like ill or it was something like maybe cancer is potentially happening. There were like discussions, and I had to just keep monitoring the issue. But there was a moment during one of the healings at one of the advanced follow ups that I was at. I was never a healee, like the person laying down, but I was a healer. And I haven't talked about this in so long, and I never really actually talked about this, but it was the last healing that we were doing. It was in 2024. I was in Dallas, um, and the energy was just so strong in the room. But before we went, like, started the actual healing, we were setting up. I got this thought that popped into my head, and it said, "You are truly healed." And I felt like pain in a few parts of my bodies where I had like the enlarged lymph nodes and a few other things. Um, and it just was so painful. And I just had like this sympathetic response. Like I was just like red, sweat, like drenched in sweat, and I just poured all of the energy out of me onto the person in front of me. And like when the healing was done, they were like, "What did you do?" And like I'm like sobbing, like just a freaking mess. But that was really like one of the like I never really like whenever you hear a testimonial or Dr. Joe talk, you always hear the person say, I believe in this, but I never thought it would happen to me. And that was my
Mm-hmm.
moment of that experience because I never had like, there are people that come to this work with like severe ailments and illnesses. And like, I never wanted to take away from that. I was always working on my personal self. I felt stable within myself. I knew I could work through it all. So I never felt like I had to be on the mat, like laying down like an actual Healy. I guess I also felt like I didn't necessarily deserve to be in that
Mm.
position. But you can heal yourself if you're trying to heal other people. And I think that that was sort of what happened there, that I was so into the experience of just being able to give my love to somebody else that that love came back to me and I healed myself in that instant as well, which was wild. And then there was a second part to this question. I forgot. Sorry.
Oh, good. I forgot it myself, to be fair. So yeah, I think just like kind of experience that really solidified, like, wow, I can heal and I can create the life.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is possible. I
Oh,
changed
the
my mind. I
second
changed my
part,
life.
creating your life. Everything happens to me like I feel like whenever I go to a Dr. Joe event, I always set an intention, and something always happens where I just like learn more about myself and I'm able to like solidify all of that information in my life when I go back and practice on my own. But I always feel like I have the biggest breakthroughs when I'm there in the room just because the energy's so strong, and I feel
Yeah.
like that really speaks to the power of like being a group coming together as one. But at last year when I was in DC, he did for the follow-up, he did essentially like a crash course on his abundance workshop. So it was in person and we did a lot of like work towards that. I loved that. I like dove in. I had my notebook. I was like truly like in seventh heaven, like dreaming, scheming of like whatever life I wanted. And so it was, I think this was like the second to last day. We did like a meditation. We like really like got clear on what we wanted, and I was like, I want my dream job and I want a relationship. So I like went into that meditation. I really focused on the job because that was something I was facing uncertainty about when I was coming back to my life, because I was on the tail end of like my year of residency in the hospital. I didn't have a job lined up. I wanted to like really just send the intention out there, see what comes back to me. I was feeling very playful. And then I was like, you know what? Let me also try for a relationship. Maybe I can do both, like just two in one. But so that was a really great meditation. I come back, so that was in like May, like end of May. I come back like a month and a half later, I get a call from one of my teachers in school. And she's like, hey, you were in our clinic. Do you want to work here in a couple of months? And I was floored because I never thought when I was there for a month as a student, like learning to practice there, like what a pharmacist does in a clinic. Um, I never believed that that could be an opportunity for me. I was like, I love that job. That was like
Mm.
my dream job, but I really wrote it off because I didn't think it was possible. They were like fully staffed. I knew it was a hard job to come by, but that opportunity opened up, and I think I like had to lock myself in the bathroom and just like cry tears of joy. Like literally at work, I was just like sobbing. And it all out. That's the job that I have now. And I go to work every single day, like truly grateful for what I do. Like every morning when I'm sitting in the car, like driving to work, I'm like, I am so grateful. And I still can't believe it sometimes how I ended up there. But like I still can't wrap my head around it sometimes. And then the relationship part didn't work out, but it was a good learning experience. So we're still on that path, but you know what? Lessons come where lessons come. So it's
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for sharing it. I bet you have some tissues in your car, like when you drive to work, like, oh my God, I'm so grateful. That's so.
heart is always full at work, and that's the one thing that I love to do. And I think that that has also been like such a great experience because I think at some point through all of this, I'd always had a dream of like working in healthcare, being able to help other people, which I get to do every single day. But getting to work in the environment that I work in with like a special population of people that have different needs than like say somebody that's healthy, or just like,
Yeah.
um, I think they truly express their gratitude to you every single day, every single person that you see, and it really opens your mind up to the ability and of what it means to provide care to other people and be able to serve other people. And I think that that's something that I was actually listening to something last night, and it's coming back to me now as I talk about this, where you're very mission driven, and you dedicate a part of your life or all of your life to helping other people. That truly is like the highest form of motivation that we can have as a human being, and it really opens you up to everything else in life.
Mm,
Like that's the truest expression of who you can be, helping other people and being able to like serve and be able to make a change in the world in some aspect.
yeah, I love that. It also feels so good. It feels just you
It
get so much
does.
back. You get way more back than what you put out in a way. It feels like.
About that necessarily, but it like truly does, knowing that like you're there and you can help in any way that you can.
Mm,
because some people have that opportunity and they don't do it, but being able to like recognize that you have that opportunity and being able to make the most of it every single day, like is truly such a blessing because not everybody has that opportunity, nor do they take advantage of it. So I'm like truly grateful, and it's always been like something that I've strived to do ever since like that. When I was a child, I always wanted to like help people in some capacity. So like being able to like realize that dream and like actually be able to live it is like very like self-healing and like fulfills your inner child as well, which I think is very important.
I don't know what to say. I just like, yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I really love this. So actually already my last question is like when the hero returns home, like from this hero journey, successfully he brings back wisdom that he or she collected and shares it with the world. And what wisdom would you like to share with us and with the listeners that you have experienced during your journey?
What wisdom? I think you have to learn to trust yourself. I think that that is when I take a look back at my journey, I think I took the first few steps. Um, Taking the first few steps required a lot of self-trust because I had to make a radical change in my life in order to stop going down the path that I was going down. Just break out of that victim mindset, stop self-inflicting so much harm onto myself in the way that I was living. And I think as you like learn and grow as a human being, it's never going to be clear cut. I think that that's sometimes the beauty of life, even though we can't see it until it's like where until you look back in hindsight. But I like you learn to trust yourself more and more the more risks you take, the more you step into the unknown, you realize that you're doing this for yourself so that you can be a better version of yourself for the people around you as well as for the world. And the way that you show up in that and you embody that requires you to just surrender to the unknown, and it's not always going to work out right away. Sometimes, you know, you stumble, you fall. It takes time for you to feel like you land back on your feet, but you always somehow end up someplace better where you were before. And that honestly is like the beauty of the journey that is life. You find happiness, you find relationships, everything else falls into place along the way. Um, and yeah, I think that like you just have to learn to trust yourself, and that
Mhm.
is essentially the foundation of a good relationship with yourself and just a good life in general.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for being here on this podcast. I truly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing yourself and your journey. And yeah, just thank you from the bottom of my heart. And yeah.
Thank you so much for having me in this opportunity. I feel like hopefully somebody finds some sort of value in all of this, and I'm always happy to share my journey for the sake of the world.
Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure like I already took some things that I definitely that helped me and that felt resonant, and I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. So thank you so much, and I see you guys in the next episode. Bye.